Hi again. We've been looking at Holy Week, the last week that Jesus walked the earth before his crucifixion. On the very night before his crucifixion, he held what we have come to know as the Last Supper. The book of Mark is very succinct, goes right to it. Mark chapter 14, verse 17, when evening came, Jesus arrived with the 12. While they were reclining at the table eating, he said, I tell you the truth. One of you will betray me, one who's eating with me. Well, they were saddened. One by one they said to him, Surely not I. It's one of the 12, he said. One who dips bread into the bowl with me. Now, the first thing we need to do is kind of dispel all doubts. The Last Supper didn't take place the way we probably imagine it. Most of us probably have the idea of Da Vinci's Last Supper, 12 disciples seated on one side of a table. Um, it didn't happen that way. The Last Supper tells us more about how people ate in 15th century Italy than it does about first century Jerusalem. First century Jerusalem feasts, meals, looked a little bit more like this. They reclined at the table. In fact, Mark tells us that they reclined at the Last Supper. Now, they reclined probably around three tables arranged in a U so that servants could put food on the table, the different courses of the meal in front of them. The host would sit at the second cushion. The guest of honor would be the person just behind him. Now, that was because as you recline, it's uncomfortable. You could, when your head was heavy, lay your head on the breast of the person next to you. The guest of honor received the host's head. The second most important person was the person who laid his head on the host's breast, and then so on around until you come to the least seat at the table. Now, in the book of John, we discover something. We discover, first of all, that John was seated at that spot number 2 because John reclined on Jesus's breast. Interesting. During the meal, after Jesus announced that one would betray him, Peter motioned to this disciple, the one whom Jesus loved, who was reclining on Jesus' breast, and said, Ask him which one he means. Leaning back against Jesus, John asked him, Lord, who is it? And Jesus answered, John is the only one to record this. He's the only one who heard it. It's the one to whom I will give this piece of bread when I've dipped it in the dish. Then, dipping the bread, he gave it to Judas Iscariot, son of Simon. Jesus gave it to the only other disciple that he could have reached, the guest of honor, Judas Iscariot. Why in the world would Jesus make Judas the guest of honor? I believe it's because Jesus wanted one last chance to reach Judas. You know, Old Testament scripture says that one of them would betray him. It didn't have to be Judas. I think Jesus spent that time talking to Judas, trying to reconcile with Judas, trying to help Judas understand that he didn't have to do what he was about to do. But Judas was resolute. And so after giving him the bread, Jesus said, Judas, what you're going to do, do quickly. Judas got up, went out, and sold Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. Jesus' last conversation with Judas was an attempt to reach him, an attempt to reconcile. Who do you have today that you might need to reconcile with? I'd simply encourage you to reach out to that person the same way Jesus reached out to one who was about to treat him very unfairly. Reach out to that person. Reconcile. Would you pray with me today? Lord, reconciliation is a difficult thing. It's something that costs us. So I'd pray today, if there is one in our life with whom we need to reconcile, give us the courage to approach that person and be reconciled. I ask this in your name. Amen. God bless you. We'll continue to look at the rest of Holy Week in the next few days.